It was 6 years ago today. 6 years ago today, a man motivated by radical Islam on the Fort Hood military base killed 13 of our people and wounded 30 more. And he did it shouting Allahu Akbar. He did it having been clearly radicalized by an Islamic cleric who was so radical that we took him out with a drone strike in Yemen a few years ago. And yet, our administration refers to this as workplace violence. Our administration refuses to recognize this as an act of Islamic terror. Here are some of the facts about Nidal Malik Hasan. It was well known by his colleagues, speeches he had given, talks he gave, things he was engaging in. We have the email trains that he had been increasingly radicalized by Anwar al-Awlaki. He was from the States, was in the States for years, went to Yemen. We took him out with a drone strike. What was it? September 30th, 2011. That's how radical he was. We just took him out on our own. Hassan was radicalized by him. We have the emails. We know the discussions that were going on. He had made statements that concerned his colleagues in the military, as a military man himself. And yet, when he's shouting Allahu Akbar and murdering people, it's not radical Islam. It's not an Islamic terrorist act. Rather, it is workplace violence. Here, listen. He refers to himself, in prison, he refers to himself as a soldier of Allah. He stated, if you didn't believe in the Quran, quote, you are condemned to hell. Your head is cut off. You're set on fire. Burning oil is poured down your throat. He's shooting people, shouting Allahu Akbar, and yet it's just workplace violence. What are we thinking? Why can't our administration call a spade a spade? If someone calls himself a soldier of Allah, is shouting Allahu Akbar, and is talking about punishments that are meted on unbelievers. And look, remember, there's a lot of Islamic resentment for our wars in the Middle East. We have troops in Saudi Arabia. That's considered an outrage. We go into Iraq. We go into Afghanistan. That's considered intrusive. That's considered an outrage. That's a large reason for radical Islamic hatred about America around the world. And yet we can't call this tragic event an act of Islamic terror. It's not saying all Muslims are terrorists. It's not saying most Muslims are terrorists. It's saying he engaged in an Islamic act of terror. Why can't we clearly say that? As for his relationship with Anwar al-Awlaki, Hassan wrote, he, al-Awlaki, was my teacher, mentor, and friend. I hold him in high esteem for trying to educate Muslims about their duties to our Creator. May Allah Almighty accept his martyrdom. May Almighty Allah accept his martyrdom. This is because we took him out with a drone strike. That's his teacher and mentor. But no, we cannot say this was an act of Islamic terror. Hey, this same thing happened last year. There's a guy on his job. He's converted to Islam a year ago. Yeah, there are some job issues that come out. But how does he kill one of the people there? He beheads this person. He beheads a woman. He's converted to Islam. He's got posts that are radical on Facebook. But no. What does MSNBC have to say about the idea that it's Islamic terror? Listen.
I would be remiss not to bring up the story out of Oklahoma. It is a story that I read as a workplace violence story. But I want to play just a little bit of the sound from the press conference that followed a gentleman who beheaded a woman in the context of his having been fired. Then he goes back to the plant. He stabs several people. One of the women, her head is severed.
Oh, her head is severed. It was severed. Her head is severed. No, the guy who was a recent Muslim convert who had radical views, he beheaded her. And now here's this is the crazy thing. Why can't you say it is what it is? Here's another response on MSNBC.
But the idea to turn this into, and we're seeing right-wing media use this, continuing the narrative, look, Muslims are here in America, they're committing jihad. The man just converted last year. There was over 500 workplace killings last year. Yep. We don't know about the religion of any of those murderers, but if someone is Muslim, it's got to be a terrorist.
Right. The idea that is the relevant piece of information. So, I mean, it may be that some ideology, right-wing, left-wing, is taking this, but at that moment, in that press conference, I don't think someone is like representing right-wing ideology. They literally just believe, right? And I think this to me is the most, that there's a belief that at the core, this is something like, he also probably had breakfast that morning, but we don't think any of those things are relevant, but we do think that his conversion, his jailhouse conversion, by the way, is what's relevant.
He beheaded someone when this is the Islamic way to slay people now. Yes, it's relevant. You're going to tell me that if MSNBC was reporting on something, let's just say, God forbid, you had this group called radical Christians, all right? Crusader Christians. That's what they call themselves, Crusader Christians. And they were executing people by shooting a bullet into both of their eyes as they shouted, Jesus is Lord. The most offensive, horrific thing you've ever heard. Okay, fine. I'm just saying it. So you had this group called Crusader Christians. They're shooting people in the eye and shouting, Jesus is Lord. And then someone who joins their group 6 months ago and then executes someone in the workplace like that, shoots them in the eye while shouting, Jesus is Lord. MSNBC is not going to connect them and is not going to say, well, we've got to look into this Crusader Christianity thing because something's wrong. How utterly bogus. Hassan now wants to be considered a citizen of the Islamic State, the Islamic Caliphate, of ISIS. He's identifying with ISIS. But no, it's just workplace violence, and we're making a terrible mistake to bring Islam into it. What are we, fools? God, help us. God, help our administration. God, help TV and radio commentators and people in media. Radical Islam is here. Radical Islam is affecting people in monstrous, murderous ways. We need to confront it and expose it.